After our divorce, my ex-husband clung to this bizarre belief that I still loved him, which was both frustrating and far from the truth. What's more, he was convinced that the sole reason for our split was his mother, Jessie, as if resolving issues with her would magically fix everything. That thought alone was enough to infuriate me. I married Ken, who was 8 years older than me, when I was in my early 20s. Ken, being older, had a domineering attitude and a sharp tongue, but back then, I was young and naively thought, "He's so manly and wonderful." I accepted everything about him without question. When he complained about my cooking or how I cleaned, and said, "I'm telling you this for your own good," I believed him, thinking, "That's wonderful." And when he told me to walk 3 steps behind him on dates, I obediently agreed. My friends expressed disgust at this and warned me it wasn't right. But I was so deeply in love with Ken, having pursued him first, that their concerns fell on deaf ears. Looking back, I deeply regret how I treated those who tried to advise me, even cutting ties with them and cutting off all communication. My parents weren't fond of Ken either and opposed our marriage until the very end. But in my pathologically optimistic state, I thought, if I get pregnant, they'll have to accept it. This led to a regrettable decision to force my parents to accept the marriage by getting pregnant with my eldest daughter. This regrettable incident is still mentioned by my mom as a back then story. Now, a mother of 3 daughters, I painfully realize how reckless I was, and worry about my children potentially making the same mistakes. So we got married in a shotgun wedding, and I gave birth. Ken didn't become more involved in household chores or childcare. He remained detached, even as I struggled with new motherhood. I repeatedly asked for his help with childcare, but he always had excuses like, "I have work," or "I've never raised a child, so I don't know how." Eventually, I resigned myself to doing it alone. Thankfully, my mom came to help, which was a saving grace. Without her, I shudder to think what would have happened. As for my relationship with my in-laws, it wasn't great. Jessie, my mother-in-law, who prided herself on having 3 sons, exclaimed upon the birth of my first daughter, "You should have had a boy like me." As if the gender of the baby mattered, when all I wanted was for them to be born healthy. Even after that, Jessie would come to our house unannounced, not to help like a mom would, but to lecture me. She'd say things like, "You need to have a male heir," or "Having girls is pointless since they'll just marry and leave." Her advice wasn't helpful, just a series of meaningless admonitions. She would come, make herself feel better by lecturing, and then leave. Her snide remarks didn't stop even as my eldest daughter grew. If I mentioned sending her to daycare, Jessie would say, "It's sad that a mother isn't with her child." Or if my daughter was shy around strangers, "It's because you work and don't give her enough love." Before getting married, I thought I had to cherish Ken's mom because I loved him, but becoming a mom myself made me stronger. Ken wouldn't budge, no matter how much I complained, so I started to speak up directly to Jessie. As expected, this led to frequent mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. Ken finally started to intervene, albeit only 1 in 3 times. Initially, Ken was of no use, always defending his mom. But when Jessie mistook a gift I chose for Mother's Day as Ken's choice and complained about it for an hour, or when she blamed me for a stomachache after eating sweets Ken bought, saying it was because of the bad sweets I gave her, he began to see my point. Finally, Ken took my side completely and apologized for the first time since our marriage, admitting his mom was wrong. We had serious discussions about sharing household chores and childcare, my pent-up feelings, and dealing with Jessie. Gradually, Ken began to participate more in housework and childcare. He started to shield me from Jessie's constant jabs. He wasn't perfect, but he had changed a lot compared to before. I still resent him for leaving me alone with a newborn, though. I still resent having to take care of a newborn all by myself, which was incredibly tough. Even then, there were times when I was mocked, but by that point, I had grown a thicker skin and could just brush it off with a, yeah, or assertively telling someone when I really didn't like something. When our eldest daughter was 4, I found out I was pregnant with our second child, This time Ken, who hadn't done much during my first pregnancy, started to take initiative. When I was laid up with morning sickness, he would prepare simple dishes for our daughter or hang the laundry, albeit a bit wrinkled. I was very grateful for his help, but Jessie couldn't stand being silent about it. Somehow, she heard that Ken was doing chores and stormed into our house uninvited, looking furious. "What are you doing making your husband do housework? Morning sickness is nothing serious. When I was pregnant, I did all the housework, even when I was bleeding. If it's that hard, you should just quit your job and take care of the house. This is the problem with working women, always so weak and whiny." After saying her piece, she left huffing and puffing. I told Ken about this, and he strongly confronted Jessie. It was astonishing how she could brag about doing household chores in such a dangerous state during her pregnancy. Ken's reprimand seemed to work, as she stopped barging in. However, during my second pregnancy, I developed complications and had to be hospitalized. I had only told my parents, not my in-laws, but somehow Jessie found out. Despite being told that only my husband could visit, she barged into the hospital, causing a scene in the waiting room, shouting, "I'll set my son's wife straight." Afterwards, Jessie was lectured and escorted out by the doctors and nurses. I apologized profusely to them, feeling embarrassed and sorry. The nurses said it was a common occurrence, which was a sad realization in itself. Afterwards, thanks to the help of the nurses and Ken's support, I safely gave birth to our second daughter. She inherited my features, hooded eyelids, and natural curly hair, unlike our first daughter, who has Ken's distinct double eyelids. But she was just as precious to me as our first, the most beautiful child in the world. However, Jessie found something to criticize again. When we went to show the baby to Ken's parents after getting discharged, Jessie looked at our second daughter and said, "She has such an unlucky look on her face. It's depressing to watch. This must be because you worked during pregnancy. And another girl? You really are useless. In the old days, girls were considered so worthless they were given away." I was so fed up with her that we left immediately. I unloaded all my pent-up frustrations and sadness from her insult to our second daughter on Ken, crying my heart out, and warned him, "If you make me deal with that woman again, it's divorce." Honestly, I wouldn't have minded divorcing at that point, considering everything. But Ken promised to keep us away from her, so I decided to trust him and leave the rest to him. True to his promise, my daughters and I never met Jessie again, and Ken only occasionally visited her. I heard Jessie was angry, but I didn't care. It was all her fault after all. So when I got pregnant with our third child, I didn't tell her, and even after the birth, I never let her meet the baby. Our third child was also a girl, which made me even less inclined to let her meet Jessie. I knew she would just make another snide comment like, "Another girl, huh?" For decades, my daughters and I lived without any contact with Jessie, enjoying stress-free Christmases and Thanksgivings, until one incident shattered our peaceful family life and led to our separation. The incident was Jessie injuring her leg and becoming unable to move around as she used to. Ken told me about it after returning from his parents' house, and my response was just, "Oh, really?" But then, in the next moment, Ken said something absurd. "I want to invite Mom to our house." He had even already told her she could come. That's what real aversion feels like. I couldn't understand why he would make such a decision. First of all, Ken's unmarried younger brother lives with Jessie at the in-laws' house, so there's no need to bring her to our house for care. When I pointed this out, Ken suddenly declared, "I'm the eldest son, so I should take care of her," despite never using the eldest son argument before. Apparently, Jessie did most of the housework, leaving the younger brother incapable of managing anything. I suggested, why not share the caregiving responsibilities with your brother at your parents' house? Ken responded, "But I'm the eldest son, and I've never really shown my gratitude to Mom. This is my last chance to show my appreciation. We don't know how many years she has left." By the way, Jessie is robust other than her leg injury, with no issues in her health checkups. While it's fine for him to show gratitude to his parents however he wants, I told him, I have work, so I won't get involved, and I won't allow her in our house. Ken retorted, but your salary from your clerical job isn't that significant, right? I've indulged your whims until now by not visiting my parents' house. But now you can't help with an emergency situation? Really? Mom was right. Working women are inflexible and charmless. You were the one who confessed to me, and now you can't even support me a little? He sighed in exasperation. Then, to my shock, he produced a complete divorce application and said, think about this, and left without waiting for my reply. I couldn't stop crying as I looked at the filled-out divorce application. I couldn't help but wonder why I ever married such a terrible man. I was overwhelmed with tears of regret. Was Ken really perceiving my refusal to visit his parents' house due to Jesse's harassment as just my whim? Had he forgotten how his own children were constantly belittled by her? The reason I worked was because Ken's salary alone wasn't enough to support us. Yet he saw my job as another one of my whims. That's ridiculous. Fortunately, our children were already independent, so there were no child support expenses. My salary wasn't high, but it was enough for me to live on my own. And with a full-time job, I had a decent bonus, so there were no financial worries. Deciding this, I packed my belongings, informed my children of the divorce, and they unanimously supported my decision, saying I had endured enough. I then moved to a business hotel and filed the divorce papers the next day. When I explained the situation to my parents, they just shook their heads, saying they had opposed the marriage for this reason. After filing, I contacted Ken to inform him that I had submitted the divorce application. He called me immediately, angrily asking, "Why did you file it?" I responded, "You told me to think about it, right? So I thought about it and decided to file. Is there a problem?" He replied, "I didn't mean it like that, and I didn't think you would actually file it." What? Did you think showing me the divorce papers would make me comply? Wow, I didn't know you could be so deceitful. The person I fell in love with wasn't like that. Besides, anyone who uses threats and divorce papers to get their way would instantly kill any love I had. I can't trust or live with someone so cowardly. When he asked, "Don't you still love me anymore?" I replied, "I did. But at that moment, I started to hate you. There's no reason to love someone who threatens me with divorce papers." I said this with a surprisingly cold voice and then hung up the phone and turned it off. After turning my phone back on, I saw many missed calls from Ken, but I had nothing left to say to him, so I didn't call back. Then Ken came to my parents' house, pleading at the front door for me to come back and deeply apologizing. Of course, my answer was no. I reiterated the reasons I had given over the phone. As he continued to complain and express dissatisfaction, I said, "You say you want me to come back, but you just want a servant to take care of Jessie, right? It seems like you've already told your siblings you'd take her in, and now no one is willing to help you. Am I wrong? Besides, you said it yourself. You want to show gratitude to your parents. Without me, you can do that to your heart's content. Isn't that great?" He didn't argue, so probably I was right. Still, he wouldn't leave, so I threatened to call the police, and that made him leave, looking disappointed and defeated. Afterwards, I messaged him saying, "If you come again, I won't hesitate to call the police." He didn't respond. There was no further contact from him, and I continued my life as usual, but one day, I received a call from Annie, the wife of Ken's second brother, the third son, with whom I had had little interaction. I hadn't seen or contacted her since I stopped going to the in-laws' house. Annie, too, had been harassed by Jesse. Apparently, Jesse had some pretty harsh things to say to Annie, who couldn't have children, which led to Annie and her husband, Ken's brother, moving far away and effectively cutting ties with the in-laws. The reason Annie contacted me was, of course, related to the in-laws. She knew about our divorce because Ken had told his brother, and Annie shared with me what had happened to Ken afterwards. As expected, Ken had planned to leave all of Jesse's care to me, but my divorce had thrown his plans into disarray. In a panic, Ken called a family meeting with his brothers. However, since he had already boasted about taking in Jesse as the eldest son, there was conflict when the story changed, leading to a fight among the brothers. The second son insisted he couldn't help because he didn't know housework and was busy with work. The third son, whose wife had a history of being harassed, refused to have anything to do with Jesse. With his brothers adamantly refusing to cooperate and no resolution in sight, Ken stubbornly declared, "Then I'll take care of her, you ungrateful people," and took Jesse in. He accused them of lacking gratitude towards their parents, but I think Ken, who first said he would take her and then backed out, is the one who failed to fulfill his responsibility to his parents. Taking care of her while working must be tough. Everyone at work said the same. Also, during the discussion, my husband mentioned that Ken still believed you must love him, blaming Jesse for driving you apart. So there might be a chance that he will try to contact you again. I don't want to bring up Ken's matters, but I thought I should warn you. Hearing this gave me chills. After everything that had happened, how could he still believe I had any love left for him? It seems from what I heard that Ken doesn't think the divorce was his fault. I thanked Annie and ended the call, staying alert for a while, but there was no contact from Ken. Years passed without any incident, and I thought my worries had been unnecessary. But Annie's warning eventually became a reality. Nearly 10 years after the divorce, I received a call from Ken. Expecting nothing good, I answered, but it was just small talk at first. Growing impatient with the pointless conversation, I told him I'd hang up if he had nothing important to say. He then hurriedly began talking about his situation. Ken's life had been as Annie suspected. Taking care of Jesse while working was extremely difficult. He often had to miss work for caregiving duties, and Jessie, frustrated with her inability to move as she wished, started taking it out on Ken. Initially, it was just venting, but her paranoia escalated, accusing Ken of stealing her wallet and screaming at him as a thief. Realizing something was seriously wrong, Ken took a reluctant Jessie to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with dementia. Despite being prescribed medication, she didn't calm down. She would scream loudly enough for the neighborhood to hear, claiming that strangers were entering the house and attacking her. With her physical strength still intact, she even started wandering outside, pushing her walker. Ken, finally reaching his limit, decided to place Jessie in a facility and humbly asked his brothers to share the costs. Recently, they managed to find a place for her. After hearing everything, my immediate response was, "So what?" I was even surprised by my own unconscious reaction. Ken seemed even more shocked. I told him, "If someone else told me this, I might say, that's tough, but honestly, I couldn't care less about you guys. Why are you even telling me this? So what if she's in a facility? It's none of my business." When he asked why I was being so cold, I replied, "What? You wanted sympathy or a there from your ex-wife? You're a man over 60 seeking comfort from an ex-wife. That's creepy. We were married once, but now we're strangers. I'll say it again. I don't love you or anything like that. I'm indifferent. I'm happy post-divorce, so stop disturbing my life." Then I hung up and blocked Ken's contact details, something I should have done long ago. I thought that would make it clear to Ken, but I was naive. Later, a letter from Ken arrived at my parents' house. The letter, written over 4 pages, was more like a creepy note than a love letter. It said, "I'm sorry for being a coward who didn't protect you from the devil that was Mom. She tore us apart, but now that devil is gone. There's nothing to stop us. I know it's been a long detour, but if any of your feelings remain, I'm ready to accept your love. Come back with nothing but yourself." Reading it with my mom, we both felt disgusted. Apparently, Ken also reached out to our daughters, asking for their help to reconcile, but all of them refused, and my dad even scolded him, saying he was the problem. Enraged, Ken apparently accused our daughters of being ungrateful for his financial support for their education. But when our eldest asked him if he really thought I'd want to reconcile with someone who spoke so arrogantly, he lost his earlier bluster and fell silent. Though my daughters are still living independently, and it's unlikely Ken would go to them, I still warned them to be cautious and shared the content of the letter. There was a time when I heard that men often think every woman they date is interested in them, but I shrugged it off as unlikely. Now, I can't believe it was actually true. After more than a decade since our separation, Ken sending such a letter proves he still doesn't think he's at fault. But of course, there's no chance of repairing our relationship. Now that he's been rejected by his own daughters, he can spend his lonely old age alone.
Welcome home. You must be tired. Come on in. Hi, mother-in-law. As I try to follow my husband inside, my mother-in-law blocks my way. Jennifer, could you go shopping for us? Wait, just me? Of course. You're the daughter-in-law. Here, I made a list. With that, she slams the front door shut. My name is Jennifer, a 25-year-old housewife. I've been married to David for 2 years. I actually had a long-term boyfriend before. He confessed his love to me at our middle school graduation, and we dated through high school and college for 5 years. I assumed we'd get married once we settled into our careers. But then, as my sophomore year of college was ending, he vanished. I'm sorry, we should break up. That was the only message he sent before disappearing from my life. I couldn't find out where he'd gone, even my local friends. I was devastated. If you want to break up, at least give me a reason. He vanished without a word after 5 years. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't move on for a long time. I wished he'd just dump me harshly. I spiraled during the rest of my college years. I went to parties every week and became known for hugging every guy there. Thankfully, I never went further than that. It's a relief that he didn't do anything more. Probably because he had self-control. My longtime friends couldn't stand to see me like this. They started introducing me to decent guys. Maybe a new boyfriend would help me settle down. That's what they must have thought. All the guys were calm and quiet. But I wasn't interested. I was afraid of being abandoned again. Still, I showed up for my friends. Then, I met someone who made me think maybe this could work. That was David. David was older and had a clear vision of marriage from the start. I want to focus on my career and I want a wife who'll support me at home. His words struck a chord. I remembered imagining married life with my ex. Yes, I had dreamed of marriage. We started dating with marriage in mind. After graduating college, I worked for a year to gain experience before we got married. Even though it was just a year, I learned a lot and didn't want to quit. But it was a promise with David. I wanted to get married, so I quit my job and became a housemaker. Our married life has been smooth. David has been nothing but kind. I actually know how to do household chores since I lived alone before getting married. David would even take the lead in doing chores when I wasn't feeling well. He doesn't work for a big company, but he's dedicated to his job. We may not live a flashy life, but I was content with our marriage. One day, as we were approaching our second Christmas together, my mother-in-law called. Come home for Christmas this year. We have to visit relatives too. I felt tense at her tone. She always speaks sternly. And since my own mom is laid back, I always get nervous around mother-in-law. Yes, of course. We'll both come home. Last Christmas, we went on a trip since it was our first year of marriage, so we didn't visit the in-laws. I remembered how David had said he'd explain to his parents, but then left it to me when mother-in-law called. Could it be that he can't express his opinions to his parents? The invitation made me dread the upcoming Christmas. That's what I thought, but my husband's house is one I don't interact with on a daily basis. But I told myself it's just 2 days. I can endure it. Hey, David, mother-in-law called. What did Mom say? She said we should both come home for Christmas. We have to visit relatives too. Right, we didn't go last year. So we decided to spend Christmas with the in-laws. We prepared gifts. We should be good. On Christmas Day, we headed to the in-laws. About an hour and a half drive away. I was nervous about going back after so long. Just relax, it's Christmas, David said casually. As we got out of the car, someone called out to us. David! Rushing over and wrapping her arm around David was his cousin Emma. Oh, Emma! David shook off her arm, looking annoyed. Emma is a year older than David. The first time we met, she spoke to him while wrapping her arm around him, which surprised me. I thought she liked David and saw me as a rival. But the truth was the opposite. Emma had teased David since they were kids. Even as adults, she still teases him like this. That's why David isn't fond of Emma. But Emma is really friendly to me. Jennifer, long time no see. Let's have lots of drinks together this Christmas. See you tomorrow. I have things to do. Sure. See you tomorrow. Emma quickly went back into the house. Bad luck to run into Emma right away, David grumbled. The entrance to his parents' house is in the opposite direction from the relatives' entrance. Complaining, David started walking toward his family's house. Thanks to Emma, I'd forgotten my nervousness. Maybe she came out just to help me relax. Thinking that, I reset my mood and followed David into the in-laws' house. We're home! As my husband opens the front door, mother-in-law rushes over. Welcome back! You must be tired. Come on in. Hello, mother-in-law. As I try to follow my husband inside, mother-in-law blocks my way. Jennifer, could you go shopping for us? Wait, just me? Of course. You're the daughter-in-law. Here's the list. With that, she slams the front door shut. The shopping list she handed me was ridiculously long. Olive oil, vinegar, baguettes, drinks, fruits. Clearly heavy stuff. Plus, it included expensive items like steak and lobster. I've only been to the in-laws a few times, and I have no idea about the area. That's a considerable amount, isn't it? How am I supposed to carry all this by myself? And what about the money? It's absurd to expect me to pay for all this. And my husband, who must have heard the conversation, doesn't come out. Hey, David, this is your cue. I stood dumbfounded outside, waiting for him to appear. After a while, I heard laughter from inside the house. I get it. I'm being ignored. I refuse to be treated like a housekeeper on Christmas. Fed up with mother-in-law's blatant harassment and my husband's indifference, I angrily drove back home. I bought food and drinks for a relaxing Christmas. After chugging a beer, I noticed an unfamiliar sound. It was coming from my husband's belongings. I got mad at my mother-in-law and went home with my husband's luggage in the car. I had brought his stuff home, including his phone. It kept ringing, so I got curious. I'd never looked at his phone before, but now I checked the caller ID. It was a woman's name. As I froze, the call ended and a message came in. Contains a series of short sentences. Therefore, messages can be read just by looking at the mobile phone screen. David, when are you coming back from the in-laws? I'm jealous here with your wife. I'm holding off on seeing you for Christmas. But come see me as soon as you get back. What's this? Apparently my husband was cheating. In that moment, my feelings for him cooled. I thought mother-in-law's harassment was a minor issue since we rarely met. But if my husband was cheating, that's a different story. There's no point in enduring a marriage like this. I immediately tried to unlock his phone. The password was unbelievably my birthday. Using my birthday to lock a phone he uses to text his mistress? Seriously? I collected evidence of his affair. No need for a private investigator. His phone had enough proof. The exchange of messages in photo folders were more than enough evidence. Now, what should I do? I sent a message to his mistress from his phone. My wife went back to her parents' house after a fight so we can spend Christmas together. Come over. She replied immediately. I sent her my address and waited. She said she'd be there in about an hour. Then 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. That's quick. I opened the door to find my husband, father-in-law and mother-in-law standing there. Oh, you're back. Mother-in-law and my husband look downcast. What happened to you two? Let us in for now. My husband, father-in-law and mother-in-law came into the room when I heard that voice. The voice wasn't father-in-law's. Who could it be? I look at the entrance and see Emma standing there. And next to Emma is grandmother-in-law, mother-in-law's own mother-in-law. I'm stunned by grandmother-in-law's appearance. Why are you? Come on, David, and Aunt Sue too.
Jennifer, sorry for ignoring you earlier.
Jennifer, sorry for making you feel harassed. Upon closer inspection, both of them look quite pale. Because grandmother-in-law is staring at him. They've been scolded by grandmother-in-law, who hates wrongdoing and bullying. She's intimidating because she's blunt. But you can tell she's loving when you talk to her. I've always liked grandmother-in-law for that reason. Apparently, Emma had confronted my husband because our car hadn't returned to the parking lot. My husband had been lounging at home, not even realizing I was gone until Emma asked. Furious, Emma questioned him and he blamed mother-in-law. That's how the shopping incident came to light. Grandmother-in-law had heard about it and had been scolding them. Father-in-law, who had been out cleaning the neighborhood, was also shocked when he heard the story later. I had turned off my phone, so they couldn't reach me. They had rushed home to find me. As we were talking, the doorbell rang. The person ringing was, of course, her. Emma, could you get the door? From the entrance, I heard a, What? Come in, you? Stop, no. I hear voices arguing. My husband looks pale, realizing who has arrived. Now the climax begins. I had a hard time holding back my laughter. The woman my husband thought he had invited tried to flee, but was caught by Emma and dragged into the room. Everyone was stunned when they saw her. I was too, because she was dressed like a maid, complete with a frilly headpiece and a fluttering mini skirt. So my husband was involved with someone like this? The woman, thinking she had been invited by my husband, was shocked to find a room full of adults. David, what's going on?
Well, David, explain.
Well, this girl is, your mistress, right?
What? How do you know?
Yeah, because I saw your phone. I've gathered plenty of evidence from your phone, from photos to messages. I've seen it all. Hearing this, the mistress turned beet red and let out a strange cry. No, David, mother-in-law, help me. Wait, mother-in-law? Shockingly, the mistress wasn't just calling my husband's help, but also for mother-in-law's.
What's going on here?
What followed was utter chaos. My husband was grilled by Emma and me about the affair. Mother-in-law was being sternly questioned by father-in-law and grandmother-in-law about her mistreatment of me. All three were angrily told that it was unacceptable for mother-in-law to have condoned the affair. The shocking part was how my husband met the maid. Apparently, mother-in-law was the catalyst for their meeting. For some reason, mother-in-law had taken an interest in maid cafes. Feeling awkward going alone, she had my husband accompany her. They both liked the place and started going regularly, which led to the affair. Mother-in-law even had a soft spot for the mistress and seemed to have turned a blind eye. I can't fathom why she wouldn't stop her son's affair. So we decided to divorce by Christmas. It seems father-in-law and mother-in-law also decided to divorce while they were at our place. Witnessing 2 divorces, the mistress was trembling. Emma was keeping an eye on her, speaking in a stern voice, so she seemed quite scared. She might be traumatized by the idea of marriage now. Well, that's not my problem. I got a settlement from my husband, the mistress, and mother-in-law, and went back to being a free, single woman. I found a job, and life was good. Actually, something interesting happened to me after the divorce. Emma and I had become drinking buddies. Today, we're going bar hopping again. As I head to our meeting place, I see someone standing next to Emma. Is that Emma's boyfriend? As I approach, the man turns around, and I'm almost breathless. It's my ex-boyfriend, who had disappeared. He's also surprised to see me. Emma, sorry, I have to go. What? Jennifer, why? I start running, and my ex chases after me.
Jennifer, wait, let's talk.
Finally, I got to hear the truth about back then. Apparently, his family had been going through a series of misfortunes. His grandma had dementia, his dad's business went bankrupt, and his mom collapsed from caregiving fatigue. They had moved to the countryside to live with relatives. His grandma passed away, but things have settled down now. He apologized for not having the courage to tell me about this family situation. I get it. You had a tough time, but you should have told me.
I'm sorry.
Even though it's in the past, knowing the truth made me feel better. And then, I got another surprise. By some coincidence, my ex works at the same place as Emma. They had the same shift today, so he invited her for drinks. Emma was the most shocked to find out about our past relationship. From then on, we became drinking buddies, including Emma's boyfriend. Whether or not I'll get back with my ex, I don't know. But for now, I want to cherish the fun life I have.
I'm Emily. I live with my husband Ethan and his parents. His dad is pretty quiet. He has hobbies, but doesn't talk much. He's harmless, but his mom is the real problem. She clearly dislikes me and doesn't even try to hide it. I've pretty much experienced every passive-aggressive move in the book. Ethan defends me, but it's like talking to a brick wall. No matter what I say, they just won't listen. At breakfast, she'll say, "What's in today's soup?" I reply, "It's just regular soup." "No, it's not. It's spicy and it raises my blood pressure." "Well," I say, "please take that up with the soup manufacturer. I made it according to their instructions." "Goodness, using something like that?" "I'm busy. If you have the time to pick on me, use it to make a better soup." "Mom, maybe practice cooking first. That one time you made that slimy soup was a disaster." "That was just one mistake. Stop bringing it up. I'm done with this." "All right. Please clear the dishes. You always leave them stuck on." "I don't know what you're talking about." With that, she slams the door behind her and leaves the dishes as they are. She's always like this, quick to criticize but never actually doing anything herself. She doesn't set an example, nor does she correct her ways. "I'm sorry." "It's fine. It's the usual. But it's not like the stress doesn't build up. Her behavior isn't limited to just breakfast issues. Hanging the laundry. Hey, I told you to hang it the way I do it, didn't I? Well, if you don't like how I do it, you can hang it yourself." "Why should I? It's your job." "Mother-in-law, you're a housewife, right? You said housework is the job of a housewife." "I get to take a break now that you're here. I've been doing it all along." "How many times do I have to tell you? I'm a working mom."
Starting to lose your memory? Oh my, you're such an ungracious person. Even so, mother-in-law never actually hangs the laundry. She won't even take it in, let alone fold it. When the laundry's done, "Hey, did you clean?" Mother-in-law finished her morning chores and seemed displeased with me, coming over to complain again. I wish she'd channeled that energy into helping around the house. But mother-in-law stands imperiously in front of me, without any cleaning supplies, screeching at me in a shrill voice. Annoyed, I retort, "The Roomba's handling it." She turns red and fumes. "You're slacking off." "I'm not. I clean regularly. In my day, I swept the floors every day." "Nowadays, we don't sweep every day, and I do a thorough cleaning once a week." "Once a week?" "That's why I let the machine handle the detailed cleaning. Would you like to show me how it's done?" "It's your job." "So I let the machine take care of it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." "You act so high and mighty for someone who doesn't do much." Mother-in-law dislikes everything I do and complains at every turn. This holds true even when relatives gather. She keeps bullying me in front of them. Nothing seems to have changed this year either. "Long time no see. How've you been?" "You look well, Linda." "I didn't ask you, did I?" Before greeting Linda, mother-in-law gives me a sharp look and waves me off with her hand. "No need to be like that. You seem unchanged as well."
Same old, same old. Always so cheeky and annoying.
"Why can't we all just get along?"
I'm trying to get along. I'm offering guidance.
"That's just bullying, you know?"
Emily slacks on housework, can't cook to save her life, and always makes the soup too spicy.
I have to admire my mother-in-law's knack for exaggerating everything I do in the worst possible way. But Linda and the others don't seem to mind, knowing her tendency.
Even so, Emily cooked this year's meal, right?
"Yes, I did." "How's the taste?"
It's delicious. You could have just used store-bought, you know.
I could have bought something, but using store-bought feels like admitting defeat, something I can't bring myself to say. Besides, I don't actually hate cooking. As long as there's no one to complain, that is.
Exactly. Since you're not good at it, just use store-bought.
Didn't you say store-bought was unacceptable for the end of the year?
I never said that.
I remember a conversation we had at the end of the year.
Emily, what are you planning for New Year's dishes?
Well, I should start prepping soon. Prices are going up.
You're buying it?
I was a bit irritated by her presumptive tone, so I retorted, "No, I'll make it myself." Her usual lack of listening skills is almost impressive.
You said it's getting expensive, which means you're buying it. If you knew it was pricey, you should have ordered early.
What are you talking about? I said the ingredients are getting expensive.
Oh, stop making excuses.
I'm tired of this. Can we drop it?
How rude. Disrespecting your elders like that?
Sure, whatever. My mother-in-law, who probably doesn't remember our end-of-year conversation, starts bad-mouthing me again. She really lacks charm, you know. It'd be nice if she could be more straightforward. Linda looked at mother-in-law in disbelief.
Emily, I'm impressed you put up with mother-in-law like that. What do you mean?
Exactly what I said.
I didn't ask you.
No, seriously, that's what I mean. Well, it's fine. I'm actually planning to move out soon. What?
Wait, why? Are you thinking of divorcing?
I mean, if it were just mother-in-law, I'd consider it. What about Ethan?
Oh, didn't I mention? We're moving out.
What?
What do you mean? We're relocating. Mom insisted we live with her, but she won't stop harassing Emily and doesn't lift a finger around the house.
So, we're okay to move.
I see. That's great. The person you can't stand is leaving.
Thanks for your help.
Do you think you can just do that? Of course. We're not children. Neither is Emily. There's no way your dad would allow it. My father said it's fine. No other way around it.
Mother-in-law looked worriedly at father-in-law, but father-in-law just nodded.
It's your fault they're leaving in the first place. We have nothing to leave behind here. Even the house is a rental. It won't be a problem. They've agreed to take care of the funeral cost at least.
With that, father-in-law stood up and handed mother-in-law some papers.
It's time for us to end this. I can't live with a woman who enjoys tormenting people.
What father-in-law handed over was divorce papers. It turned out father-in-law was more observant than he seemed. Noticing his wife wasn't doing her chores and was bullying me, it got him thinking. When his son Ethan discussed moving out, he made up his mind to divorce.
So where am I supposed to live?
You're an adult. Go wherever you want. Dad is leaving too.
I'm leaving in 3 months. You'll need to vacate this place. You've got enough time to figure something out, like finding a live-in job or something. I'm not a monster. I'll leave you a good amount of money.
Mother-in-law seemed unable to keep up with this sudden turn of events.
For now, please rest in your room.
She was told as she was guided to her bedroom. Linda, I'm sorry for involving you, especially at a festive New Year's gathering.
Why apologize? This is a wake-up call. And if you're making a new decision, then it's something to celebrate. Perfect for the new year.
Linda responded, laughing heartily. After the New Year's commotion, mother-in-law became a recluse. I felt a bit guilty, but didn't know what to do for mother-in-law, who was in the situation due to her own actions. So for now, I slipped some pamphlets of adorable rental apartments through the gap under her door. Places she could afford with the savings father-in-law had told me about. For a while, I heard her sobbing from inside the room. But since she's alive, she should be fine. The food I placed outside her room is also completely gone. After some time, perhaps realizing we were not paying attention to her, mother-in-law left the house for a few days. We, on the other hand, continued to live our lives as usual without being particularly concerned. When mother-in-law returned, she exclaimed,
Why aren't you worried about me? Ah, welcome back. You're an adult. I figured you might be traveling or talking to real estate agents. We would hear from you if something came up.
Perhaps this was not the reaction mother-in-law was expecting, as she retreated to her room again, saying,
Fine.
That's when I said, You can keep to yourself, but you really should decide on a place to live soon. Last-minute rentals limit your options, and you won't be able to hire movers. Noting that I wasn't there to comfort her, she retorted,
This is all your fault in the first place.
What is?
You marrying Ethan, that's what.
We did get your approval, you know. Although, to be honest, we're in an era where we could get married without it.
I didn't like you from the first time you were brought here. You seemed too cheeky.
I was polite. It was my mother-in-law who ignored me. So I figured she wasn't interested in having a good relationship. That's why I refused to live together in the first place. Truth be told, living together was never part of the original plan. I knew I didn't get along with my mother-in-law, and Ethan wasn't keen on the idea either. But we moved in because it was becoming hard for them as they aged, and my father-in-law asked us. Probably it was hard to stomach my mother-in-law's bad cooking day after day, and she wanted someone to do household chores for her. Now I think she suggested living together just to make my life miserable.
I just thought you needed some discipline.
But when I first came, the house was a mess. The house was terrible when we first moved in. It was cluttered, barely any floor to walk on. Papers overflowing from shelves, dusty furniture everywhere. The fridge was a mix of expired food and new food, making it hard to use, and the vegetable drawer had rotting produce. We took days off and spent a week making it livable. Given the current state, if we rent a new place, it'll turn into a mess again. Should I teach you how to maintain it?
I don't need it.
But your room is still messy. From the door, I can see her room cluttered, the floor hidden beneath piles of discarded clothing. Are you okay with that? It'll get messy again soon.
I'll be fine.
Days later, we moved out of the house. My father-in-law plans to leave in a few days, too. Worried, I decided to check on my mother-in-law. When I arrived, I heard some strange noises from inside the house. Hello? Is everything all right? I walked in to find the house in terrible shape again. The floor was inexplicably soaked. Laundry was overflowing from the washing machine, and yet the clothes hung up to dry were crumpled. The kitchen sink was piled high with dirty dishes, and I could see at least 4 brooms and dustpans. This is a mess again, isn't it?
What brings you here?
Well, just doing the usual final walkthrough before moving out. You may not be aware, but it's a big deal if we don't return the house to its original state. Half of what I'm saying is true. I also came because father-in-law asked me to. The house has to be empty before we hand it over. Though, looking at its current state, that seems impossible. When are you handing over the house? Next week, right? What about your move?
I've already found a new place. The movers are coming the day after tomorrow, so I was planning on tidying up.
Then why is everything soaked?
I was trying to clean the house.
So you did a wet wipe down. So you didn't, or should I say, you didn't even know how to?
I just forgot, okay?
Why not just be honest? We're not living together anymore.
Enough with your nagging.
All right, I won't help you then. Didn't your mother-in-law teach you how to clean? Turns out, mother-in-law really can't do household chores. Her mom was proficient at them, but assumed mother-in-law would naturally learn, so she never taught her. Her mom thought the same, that her daughter would be just fine by just observing her. So mother-in-law never learned cooking or cleaning. Perhaps because of that, mother-in-law couldn't do any household chores even after getting married. After Ethan was born, she managed some tasks, but only at an elementary schooler's level. And you still managed to be such a mother-in-law from hell.
I'll be honest, because it's the end. I was ashamed of my incapability. I thought if I criticized you, my shortcomings wouldn't be exposed.
I see. Mother-in-law had her reasons, but that didn't make it acceptable for me. Being unable to do something doesn't justify attacking someone else. When I told her this, she replied,
I still can't accept you, no matter what.
At that point, there was nothing left to say. I left my in-laws' house on the day of the handover, even though it wasn't necessary. I found myself near my in-laws' place. As I approached, I could hear father-in-law's loud voice from several houses away.
Didn't I tell you we were closing today? Well, the movers didn't show up. How do you expect to move like this? But, no buts. Get this sorted out by this evening. How do you expect me to do that all by myself? Not my problem.
Even from a distance, it was clear my mother-in-law couldn't handle the move by herself. I glanced over at Ethan, who was with me. Ethan caught my gaze and sighed.
I appreciate the concern, but maybe we should go home. I can't drag you into this mess.
Oh, come on. I feel sorry for her. I really didn't, but I made a pitiful face for Ethan's sake. Inside, I was trying hard not to burst into laughter. Holding back giggles, I looked down, and Ethan must have mistaken it for crying.
You're so kind, even after what she did. Let's go home. No more heartache.
Yes, I'm sorry. As I wiped away a tear brought on by suppressed laughter, Ethan looked even more sympathetic. Feeling relieved, I thought there would be no more mother-in-law issues from now on. I did feel a bit guilty about my father-in-law, but he was also to blame for neglecting her, so this seemed fair. I hope he steps up for the final leg.
Hey, how much do you make a month? Sending $4,000 to your parents is just unfair. Help us out financially. I'm married now, so I have no obligation to that household anymore. If you need help, look elsewhere. What? You got married looking like that? The same slub who always wore sweats? You're lying. I was boiling with rage at Jane's crude laughter. Let's rewind a few months. This was when I was still living at home. My name is Diane. After graduating from college, I started working from home, so there was no need to move out. Life was peaceful until it was abruptly disrupted. My brother Brian and his wife Jane moved into our family home. Apparently, they were struggling financially and thought they could save on rent by living with us. Brian had a job, but it was clear why they were broke: Jane's extravagant spending. Jane always wore fancy clothes and expensive jewelry. It was obvious that Brian's income alone couldn't sustain their lifestyle. I don't mind them moving in. I had lived with Brian until he graduated from college. Jane was the outsider, but she was now family, being Brian's wife. I had no intention of refusing to live with them, but they seemed to feel differently. It started when Jane mocked my casual work-from-home attire, calling it so unfashionable. I was shocked to hear such a thing from a family member and could only respond with, "What?" Our parents looked stunned, but Brian chuckled and said, "Leave her alone. Diane's just a jobless slub who's given up on being a woman." Brian knew I worked from home, but from that moment on, he started calling me jobless. Jane would always make snide remarks like, "You have such an ugly face. Is being a shut-in fun?" At first, my parents defended me, but they gradually started to agree with Brian, saying things like, "Diane should really start becoming independent." I felt like the whole house was against me, and just when I thought of leaving, an incident occurred. Out of the blue, Jane confronted me, saying, "Enough is enough." I was having a late breakfast in the dining room and wondered what was going on. Both my parents and Brian were there, and it turned into a commotion. In the midst of it, Jane pointed at me and shouted, "Diane, you are stealing my jewelry, aren't you?" I had no idea what she was talking about. "I haven't done anything like that," I defended myself. "Then why was this found in your closet?" she retorted, showing off a sparkling necklace. "You went through my closet without permission?" I asked, visibly irritated. Ignoring me, Jane said, "Everyone, come and see for yourselves," and led the way into my room. Rushing after Jane, who had left breakfast abruptly, I found her pulling out a box from the depths of my closet. A box I'd never seen before. "Look," she exclaimed, shoving off the jewelry inside to Brian and my parents. "I didn't do this, okay? So you're saying Jane set this up?" Brian glared at me, and I felt myself shrink in fear. Despite my innocence, neither my parents nor Brian, who had been looking down on me lately, would listen. "We can't keep a thief like you in this house. You need to leave," Dad declared, giving me a month to move out. No matter how much I pleaded my innocence, my family only looked at me with cold eyes. There's no one in this family who will take my side anymore. I felt utterly alone and heartbroken. I started packing immediately and was done by the next day. Though I was given a month's grace, I couldn't bear the icy stares any longer. As I was about to leave, Jane approached me with a smug smile. "Done packing?" "Yes, I'll be out by today." Ignoring Jane's surprised look, I continued with my move. I thanked my parents for raising me as I left, but they still believed I was a thief and didn't respond. And so I left my childhood home unaccompanied. I headed to my boyfriend Sam's place. Sam lived in a spacious house for a single person, and I had stayed over a few times. I had explained the false accusations to him the previous night, and he readily agreed to let me move in. Sam had prepared a feast for me, from my favorite hamburger steak to shrimp fry, salad, and soup. "You've had a tough time. Relax, eat, and get some sleep," he said, making me feel truly at ease. This, I thought, is what family should be like. Sam was an excellent cook, and everything he made was delicious. As I took a bite of the juicy hamburger steak, the aroma of the demi-glace sauce filled my senses, and I couldn't help but exclaim, delicious." In that moment of happiness, as Sam smiled at me, my phone buzzed with an SMS. Not wanting to ignore it in case it was work-related, I checked the message. It was from Brian. "Guess you're crashing at a friend's place, huh? Jane says she'll forgive you if you admit your guilt and apologize. If you want to continue being a shut-in loser, apologize to Jane." I repeatedly said I didn't do it, and Brian seems to believe my guilt. Frustrated, I texted back, "I'm not a shut-in loser. I work from home. It's sad that you don't even know that's a thing these days." Brian's reply came swiftly, "Don't bother coming back," and I decided I wouldn't. A few months later, Sam proposed, and we got married. When Sam asked me how we should handle greetings to my parents, I told him it wasn't necessary. I had already cut ties with that family. I was fed up with Jane, who falsely accused me, and with Brian and my parents, who believed her. That's when I got a call. It was from Jane, the person I thought I had severed ties with. "Listen, if you were giving money to our household, you should have said something. We are in a real mess right now." Jane's furious voice was so loud that I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear. Confused, I asked, "What?" "It's about money, money!" Jane yelled, filling me on the family's current situation. Firstly, Brian had been laid off. He could have clung to his job, but he thought he could rely on his parents for support and quit. My parents were shocked. "We're actually broke," Mom told Brian and Jane, revealing they were in debt. Dad is a good person and has a personality that is easy to be deceived by others. Dad was too trusting and had co-signed a loan for a friend who then skipped town. On top of that, Dad was still paying off a car loan. When I was living at home, I used to give them about $4,000 a month, which was barely enough for them to get by. Now, they had no one to rely on, and Brian couldn't go back to his job. Desperate and furious, Jane was calling me to ask for help. "You're making how much a month? It's unfair that you give $4,000. Just help us out." I was stunned by the mess at my former home, but I had no intention of helping. "I'm married now, so I have no obligation to that household anymore. If you need help, look elsewhere," I said. After a few seconds, Jane burst into laughter. "Haha, you got married? With that face? You slab who always wore sweats. You're lying." "It's not a lie. I'm married." "Who would marry someone as ugly as you?" I was boiling with rage at Jane's crude laughter when Sam walked in. Just when I was about to hang up the phone, Sam shows up. "Lend me your phone," he said. I handed it over, and Sam spoke into it. "This is Sam, Diane's husband. I've heard everything you've been yelling. Diane is not ugly. I find her adorable, and above all, she has a beautiful heart. I think people who speak ill of others, like you, are the ones with tainted and ugly hearts." Jane was making a fuss on the other end, but Sam casually hung up. "Thank you," I said. "I couldn't let her get away with it," Sam replied, smiling shyly. Not being a tech-savvy, I didn't know how to block numbers. Sam taught me, and I promptly blocked Brian, my parents, and Jane. Of course, I blocked their messages too. I thought I was finally free from that family, but it wasn't that simple. Our new home, Sam's place, was within walking distance from my parents' house. One day, while Sam was at work, Brian, my parents, and Jane all showed up at our doorstep. When I opened the door, a red-faced Brian yelled at Jane, "Go on, apologize!" Jane started sobbing and apologizing profusely in the communal hallway of the condo. Confused, I asked my parents what was going on. The conversation was about what happened after Brian lost his job due to company restructuring. Brian seemed stressed out looking for work and couldn't rely on his parents, who he thought would support him. This tension often led to arguments with Jane. That's when Jane let it slip. "I didn't lie just to kick that freeloader out." When Brian listened closely, he realized Jane had framed me for something I didn't do. Apparently, Jane felt the house was too small and thought she'd get her own room if I were gone. Brian was furious at Jane for trying to kick me out, their financial support. The parents were angry too, saying it had gone too far. I felt sorry for Jane as she kept apologizing, tears streaming down her face. I glared at Mom when she said, "Just forgive her already." "I don't intend to forgive anyone. Why are you, Brian, Dad, and Mom acting like it's none of your business? If you had believed me when Jane set me up, none of this would have happened." "Well, none of us would have doubted you if Jane hadn't done something so stupid," Brian retorted, visibly irritated. I could only sigh. "What you, Brian, Dad, and Mom did to me isn't just that. Brian, you and Jane always made fun of me. Do you know how it feels to be called ugly and a freeloader every day? Despite all the financial help I've given, Dad and Mom didn't help me either. How did you feel when I was being insulted? Didn't you think of helping me?" Accused by me, Brian swallowed his words. The parents looked shocked for a moment. Then Mom started crying and Dad looked down. "So, I have no intention of helping," I said, moving to close the front door. "Wait, please," Brian exclaimed, starting to deeply apologize next to Jane. "If things stay like this, all of us, me, Dad, Mom, and Jane, will be homeless. We might have to sell the house. Please help us." At Brian's words, the parents also knelt and deeply apologized to me. It was quite a sight, for adults apologizing, but I simply said no and closed the front door. For a while, I could hear knocking and voices calling for me, but eventually it seemed like Brian and the others had given up. When I told Sam about it after coming home from work, he asked, "Are you okay?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, we're moving soon anyway." Sam lives in a house that's spacious for one person, but a bit cramped for two. We had already decided to move to a larger home, especially considering the possibility of having kids in the future. We've started preparing for the move, and we have no intention of telling Brian and the others our new address. This way, we were able to move without any interference from Brian. What happened next was surprising. I got a call from the police. After Sam and I moved, it seems Brian and his crew visited our old home. They were causing such a ruckus early in the morning that the neighbors called the police. When the police arrived, Brian and Jane were acting out, and they ended up being taken away. Brian apparently told the police to contact me to pick him up, but why should I? I explained that I had no reason to do so, and the officer said, "I see, take care," before hanging up. I don't know what led to do it, but from what I've heard from local acquaintances, Brian and the others are now sleeping under a bridge. Brian's job search isn't going well, and his parents are getting old. I do think life must be hard for them, but I can only think of it as someone else's problem now. Sam and I are living a happy life. Our new home is spacious, beautiful, single-family house. We moved closer to Sam's workplace, so he is thrilled that we're able to spend more time with family. I'm happy about that too. That's because I found out I was pregnant shortly after we moved. When I told Sam's parents we couldn't rely on my own for childcare, they said, "Feel free to consult us anytime." And Sam assures me, "Don't worry, I'll take paternity leave and help with raising the child. I can't wait for the baby to be born." You're getting ahead of yourself. I can't help but chuckle at Sam, who's eagerly awaiting our baby. I might have lost my blood-related family, but from now on, I want to cherish my real family.
My husband, Jamie, has always been cold towards our middle son, Morty, for some reason. This started to strain what used to be a smooth relationship between us. Is he treating Morty this way because he suspects that Morty doesn't look like him, and I might have cheated? I suggested a DNA test, but Jamie stubbornly refused. Suspecting something was off, I took the liberty of getting a DNA test done on Morty myself. What I found out was beyond belief. My name is Mia. I'm 35 years old. I work full-time to support our family. Jamie and I will soon be celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary. We hit it off at a party, and things went smoothly to marriage. We have 3 kids. Our eldest son, Mark, our middle son, Morty, and our youngest, Lucia. Jamie has always been thrilled whenever I was pregnant. When he found out Lucia was going to be a girl, he was so happy he even teared up. Though raising 3 kids takes a toll both physically and financially, I feel incredibly blessed to be surrounded by such wonderful children. All of this joy, I owe it to my kids who have grown up so well. I wish I could say I couldn't ask for more, but there's one thing that bothers me. Jamie's attitude towards Morty. He's a wonderful father to Mark and Lucia, but for some reason, he's always cold to Morty. Just recently, this happened. We went to the park as a family of 5, but Jamie would only play with Mark and Lucia. When Morty tried to join in, Jamie brushed him off, saying, "Morty, go play with your mom."
"But I want to play here with Dad and everyone else."
"Enough. I've got my hands full with Mark and Lucia."
"All right,"
Morty said, his face looking as if he's about to cry. Frustrated, I confronted Jamie. "Hey, what's wrong with you? Don't you see you're hurting Morty?"
"If you feel that way, why don't you play with Morty?"
"That's not the point. Morty wants to play with you."
"I told you, I'm busy with Mark and Lucia. I can't entertain all 3.
"You don't have to talk to him like that. Look at him. He's about to cry."
Ugh! Can you stop nagging? Look, he's not my son. Keep him away from me."
"What do you mean, not your son? That's outrageous. Morty is also the child I gave birth to. Why are you so cold?" Upon reflection, there have been signs over the years. Jamie would take off work for Mark and Lucia's birthdays, but he'd go to work on Morty's. During family trips, Morty is always left alone. The more I think about it, the colder Jamie's attitude toward Morty seems to have become over the years. Then, Morty spoke to me.
"Mom, does Dad hate me?"
"What? Why would you say that?"
"'Cause Dad is nice to Mark and Lucia, but he's always hard on me."
"I see. You've noticed too, huh? It must feel bad. You love your dad so much."
"Yeah, I want to play with Dad like Mark and Lucia do."
"Got it. I'll make sure to talk to Dad about it too," I assured. The thought of my young son feeling this way weighed on me. As a mom, it felt like a failure. After the kids had gone to bed, I approached Jamie. Hey, Jamie, can we talk? It's about Morty.
No more talk about Morty, okay?
Not okay. Morty asked me again today, does Dad hate me? How are you not embarrassed as a parent?
I don't hate him. It's just compared to Mark and Lucia, I don't find him as endearing.
What? That's your reason? They're all our beautiful children.
You wouldn't understand. Just leave Morty's issues to you. Don't involve me anymore.
Jamie stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Alone in the room, tears welled up in my eyes. Why? How could he say such hurtful things? Morty is a good kid too. What makes him different from Mark and Lucia? Nothing changed in Jamie's behavior, no matter how many times I talked to him about Morty. He only became more affectionate toward Mark and Lucia, and the difference was glaring. I started losing trust in Jamie. Then one day, I was venting to a close friend. She hesitated before saying, "Well, I can't say for sure, but could Jamie suspect you're cheating?" "Cheating? Look, Morty doesn't resemble Mark and Lucia, right? Maybe he doesn't think Morty is his." "What? I carried and gave birth to all three of them equally. Jamie was even there when they were born. But the only reason I can think of why he doesn't show affection to Morty is that." Just as she said, Morty doesn't look like me or Jamie when compared to the other two. So does this mean his attitude should change because of that? From my perspective, that's incomprehensible. Still, I can't let this continue for my second son's sake. I decided to have a serious talk with Jamie later on. "Hey, Jamie, about Morty."
Again? I thought we were done talking about this.
"Do you think I cheated on you?"
What?
"Because Morty doesn't look like us. Do you think he's someone else's child?"
No, that's not what I meant.
"So what did you mean? Why are you cold to Morty alone? It doesn't make any sense."
There's no deeper meaning.
"That's enough. No deeper meaning? Do you realize how much Morty's hurting because of your whims? Act responsibly. You're his father." After I said that forcefully, Jamie just looked down and went silent. The conversation wasn't going anywhere. I decided to resort to my final option. "Fine. If that's the case, let's go get a DNA test."
What? What are you talking about?
"Well, you keep saying things like, 'He's not my son,' or 'Keep him away.' Morty's suffering because of it."
A DNA test is going overboard.
"Then what? What should we do? Are you going to keep acting this way until we prove Morty is our biological child?"
Well,
It's settled then. I'll take care of the DNA test." As I was about to leave the room, Jamie shouted,
Wait!
from behind me. He grabbed my arm tightly and said in a low voice,
Listen, never do that DNA test.
Faced with an expression I'd never seen on him before, I got cold feet for a moment. But I couldn't back down now. I clenched my shaking legs and looked him straight in the eye. "If you can't treat Morty like you do our other kids, then I'll insist on a DNA test."
Stop this nonsense. We don't need to go to that extent.
"It's because of the way you're treating Morty. I don't want to do this either, you know?"
Calm down. There's no point in doing that.
"Enough. I can't stand seeing Morty so sad anymore. If I don't see any change in your attitude, I'll go ahead with the test." I shook off his grip and stormed out of the room. Whether it was my warning or not, Jamie started talking more to Morty. Gradually, Morty began to smile more, and I felt relieved. Then one day, all 5 of us went out for dinner. As everyone was deciding on their meals, Morty spoke up. Hey, what are you going to have, Dad?"
Oh, I guess I'll go with a hamburger.
"Then I'll have a hamburger too."
What?
"I actually like the same foods as you, Dad. I just never said it before." As Morty grinned, I couldn't help but smile too. But Jamie had a different reaction.
Why would we like the same things? You're not even my kid.
Jamie's harsh words made Morty flinch. What? Dad?
Don't call me Dad. Just stop it.
Why? Did I do something?
I'm going home first. Mia, take care of the kids.
James quietly left the table and walked out of the restaurant. You could cut the tension with a knife. The kids sensed something was off, and the whole dinner turned somber. Selfish act by Jamie, casting a shadow over even the children. I couldn't hold back any longer. That night, I cornered Jamie for a heart-to-heart. What was that today? Do you have any idea how Morty must feel?
I'm sorry.
If you want to apologize, apologize to Morty. Why would you even?
It's out of my hands, okay? He's not my son. Just leave me alone.
At that moment, my patience ran out. All three are our children. No difference. And yet, he can say such a thing so easily. There's no time to hesitate. I have to change the situation for Morty ASAP. The next day, I took a day off from work and left the kids at my parents'. I then headed to the appropriate facility and requested a DNA test. I explained the situation to my parents and decided to stay with them until the results came in. That night, I received an out-of-breath call from Jamie.
Hey, Mia, where the heck are you?
At my parents'. Me and the kids are staying here for a while.
What? Why all of a sudden?
To spare the kids any more pain. You know what I'm talking about.
Well?
Don't call us until you hear from me. Goodbye.
Hey, wait a...
Ignoring Jamie, who started to say something, I hung up the phone. My parents back home were worried too, but all we could do now was wait. Several days later, an unexpected truth came to light. I secluded myself in my room and opened the envelope containing the DNA results. My heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. Its beats were that loud. Seeing the results, I couldn't believe my eyes. What? This has to be a joke. According to the DNA test, Morty had no blood relation to us at all? He wasn't Jamie's child, nor was he mine? What the heck is going on? There's no way he's not my child. I clearly remember giving birth to Morty and during the labor pains. But the test results couldn't be lying. The names written were correct. In my shock, my mind went blank. I decided to leave the kids with my parents and head back to confront Jamie. I handed him the test results and interrogated him without mercy.
What does this mean? You can't be.
These are the DNA test results you've been refusing. Explain. You know something, don't you?
Well,
My husband fell silent, his eyes darting around evasively. At that last moment, I was incredibly angry at him for not facing the truth. That's enough. I don't know what you're hiding, but the results are out. Has this got something to do with why you've been so cold to Morty?
No, it's just...
If you won't speak up, I'll go back to the maternity clinic where I gave birth to Morty. I'll even call the police if I have to. Are you okay with that? Raising my voice, Jamie finally gave in and muttered,
All right.
Then he spilled a shocking truth.
Morty isn't our child. He's the child of the woman I cheated on you with.
What? The child of your affair?
Yeah, a woman I met around the time you were giving birth.
Wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. I gave birth to Morty and was discharged from the hospital as scheduled. That's impossible.
I met her at the maternity clinic. She was a pregnant woman whose due date was the same as yours.
What? When I pressed him for details, Jamie explained it like this. I was told I was at risk for preterm labor, so I was hospitalized at 9 months pregnant. Jamie visited often, but little did I know he had met someone else at the hospital. Turns out she was the daughter of the head of the maternity ward, and she was carrying another man's child. She fell head over heels for Jamie when he came to visit me. Apparently, She was forced into marriage by her parents to produce an heir. Maybe that's why her infidelity escalated. She wasn't in love with her spouse. Under these unique circumstances, Jamie and she began to have an illicit affair. Or rather, she aggressively pursued him, and before he knew it, they were entangled in this complicated relationship. She gave birth to her spouse's child on the same day I did. Then she cornered Jamie. "I want to raise your child. If you don't let me, I'll spill the beans to your wife. Switch our babies." In short, it was blackmail. Fresh from giving birth, I couldn't possibly hear about Jamie's affair, so he caved to her outrageous demands. As a result, our biological child was switched with hers. In the hospital, Morty, who is really her child, came home with me. Jamie, teary-eyed, finally came clean.
"I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I tried to tell you the truth so many times, but I just couldn't."
"So that's why you've been so cold to Morty."
"I tried in the beginning, but as he grew up and started to look more like her, I couldn't bear it."
"I can't believe this. All because of that."
"You don't understand how hard it was for me. My feelings are something you'll never understand, Mia."
"You can't be serious. Selfish much?" I found myself raising my voice. I couldn't believe he was playing the victim even now, refusing to acknowledge his own faults. A surge of unutterable anger filled me. "Are you kidding me? I was struggling too, you say? Like I care. Morty's gone through way more pain than you because of your self-centered actions, and yet you're acting like the damsel in distress?"
"What else could I do?"
"Really? It all started because you cheated, letting yourself be manipulated by her? What about our real child? What about Morty's feelings? What will happen to them?"
"Well, that is."
"I've had enough of you. You've lost any right to parent. I'll raise all 3 kids myself. They'll never see you again, nor will you claim to be their father. Live with your guilt, you piece of trash." Ignoring Jamie's attempt to hold me back, I stormed out of the house. I later consulted a lawyer and expedited the divorce. Jamie admitted to the affair, and based on the DNA test results, we divorced, with him taking full blame. I even found the woman he cheated with and made sure to demand alimony in the divorce trial. The only regret I had was finding out that our biological child had been living in a facility due to parental neglect. But there's no turning back now. People might think it's cruel, but Morty is my child now. From that day on, she had no contact with Jamie. I gained custody of the children, and now they're living at my parents' house. Fortunately, I have a job, so we're managing, but I expect to face various challenges ahead. Yet I have no regrets about my decision. I vow never to let Morty, who has come back to me, feel sad again. I plan to give equal love to all my children as if they are all my own.
Some people live so lavishly, even without kids.
It's tough to make a living, especially when you're not even having kids.
I want a child too. Yet my husband, my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law are relentless, oblivious to my desperation and sadness. My husband looks at me as if he's disappointed. I can't help but blame myself for not being able to conceive. My name is Emily. I'm a 35-year-old homemaker. My husband is also 35 and works a corporate job. We've been married for 5 years and have been unable to have kids. This has been a burden on me for a long time. Emily, still no kids? Yes, I'm sorry. It's getting late. While your father-in-law is still the head doctor, we need our grandkids to be doctors. We have our needs too. 3 months into our marriage, my mother-in-law first said this to me. Ever since her words became routine, and I've been stressing and blaming myself. My husband's parents run a hospital. His father is the head doctor, and his sister is the deputy. It's a fairly large hospital. As the eldest son, my husband wanted to be a doctor too. However, he couldn't get into med school due to poor grades. He seems to insist that our child must become a doctor and inherit the hospital.
Until you're 35.
What are you talking about?
You have until you're 35 to have a kid. That's the deal.
But it's not something that can be achieved just by trying. My husband, like my mother-in-law, set a deadline, which makes me anxious.
Our future child must be a doctor. Otherwise, there's no benefit for me.
According to my husband, his sister will inevitably take over once his dad retires. Then our child will become a doctor and take the seat of the third-generation head doctor. That's the plan. Truth is, his sister has a daughter in middle school who excels in studies and dreams of becoming a doctor like her mom. My father-in-law adores her. So there's already a candidate to inherit the hospital. Although it's not like there's no successors, my husband seems to have different thoughts. If this continues, his sister will become the second-generation head doctor, but he cannot stand the thought of letting her daughter inherit after that. And agreeing with him is my mother-in-law. She adores my husband and feels sorry that he couldn't become a doctor. That's why she keeps nagging me to have a child soon. He couldn't become a doctor due to his lack of aptitude. Holding on to that dream for their grandchild seems misguided. Amid these conflicting intentions, I ended up being suspected of infertility 2 years into our marriage and had to see a specialist. Since my father-in-law's hospital didn't offer the service, my sister-in-law introduced me to a friend who's a doctor. Upon returning from my first consultation, my mother-in-law immediately called. "What's the issue? Do you have some sort of defect?" I was stunned by her bluntness, but reminded myself that she's always straightforward, and answered, "No, they didn't say it was a flaw, but stress could be a factor. They recommend taking it easy." Then, from the other side of the phone, I hear my father-in-law shouting,
"Bring those test results here now."
"So quit your job and laze around the house all day. What stress could you possibly have?" "I'm sorry." I had to listen to my mother-in-law's lectures for a while longer before hanging up. At that moment, I didn't realize I'd have to go through many more conversations like this. My struggle with not being able to conceive started affecting my husband too. He began finding faults in everything I did.
"So you've been home all day, just watching TV?"
"I've been doing chores."
"Really? Then why is there so much dust everywhere?"
He snapped, wiping surfaces to show me the dust. "All right, I might have missed a few spots. I'll be more careful."
"What's your problem? I'm providing for you, aren't I?"
My husband's irritation escalated quickly, and I usually chose to stay silent to avoid fights. Then he leaned in and said,
"Just hurry up and have a baby,"
before storming off. Life at home was growing more and more strained. While facing the ongoing pressure to have children from my husband and mother-in-law, I started wondering if the problem might actually be with him. Not that I was suspicious, but if I'm healthy, it's reasonable to consider whether he might be the issue. However, both he and my mother-in-law dismissed the idea outright. One day, I mustered the courage to discuss it with him. "Don't you think we should get checked? I don't seem to have any issues. What about you?"
"What are you implying? That I'm the reason we can't have kids?"
"I'm not accusing you of anything. But if it's an issue, we need to treat it, right?"
"You're joking. There's no way I'm the problem."
He stormed off, furious. I tried bringing it up in different ways, asking him to consider testing. But he was stuck on blaming me. I couldn't push it further, and the problem remained unresolved. Then, a shocking event unfolded. I found out my husband was cheating. He was coming home late every day, looking uneasy and restless. I had suspicions, but didn't plan on gathering evidence. At that point, love might have already been missing from our relationship. One day my husband and I visited his parents' house. As always, I felt overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's nagging about having kids and my father-in-law's comments suggesting we should check for fertility issues. Then, my husband dropped a bombshell.
"You know, I might have a kid with someone else. If that happens, I won't need you."
His mother chimed in. "At this point, I don't care who has David's child. Anyone will do." They both laughed, uproariously. I felt my patience nearing its end. Time passed aimlessly as my husband continued his affairs with his mother's approval. Then I got a message from my sister-in-law saying she was in the area. We met up at a local cafe, and she had surprising advice for me. Emily, why not go back to work? I'd love to, but you know they'd be against it. You haven't been able to have kids even as a homemaker. Plus, you have a nursing degree, so why not use it? I always found great fulfillment in my work as a nurse. My sister-in-law had watched me suffer quietly and said that enough was enough with my in-laws. You're becoming their stress ball, she said, pushing me to talk to my husband about returning to my nursing job. However, he flat out refused.
What if you get pregnant? You'll just quit, causing trouble for everyone,
he argued, making it sound like my only job was to bear children. I snapped back. What about you? You haven't even checked if you're the issue, blaming everything on me.
Shut up. It's all your fault.
5 years into the marriage, my love for my husband had utterly evaporated. When we got divorced, my mother-in-law said, You wasted 5 years of our lives. You couldn't even give us a grandchild. I stood my ground. Are you sure it's all my fault? David never took any tests. I looked her straight in the eye and declared, I will have a child. 2 years have passed since then. I returned to my nursing career and threw myself into my work to forget those painful 5 years of marriage. I'm currently working at a specialized clinic for women with fertility issues, the very same place my sister-in-law introduced me to when I was married. I currently work at a fertility clinic, the same one my sister-in-law introduced me to when I was struggling with fertility. Life had finally settled down, and I decided to catch up with my high school friends via email. I had a friend returning from overseas work in New York, so we all agreed to meet up. I wasn't exactly free to move around, but neither were my friends, so I took the lead in planning a get-together that wouldn't be a burden for anyone. Thanks to my supportive family, I managed to make it to the restaurant we agreed upon, despite the busy preparations. In a private room at the restaurant, we all had a great time catching up and reminiscing. After a while, I excused myself saying, I'll be right back, and left the room. The restaurant was bustling, filled with lively conversations. Among the chatter, it was easy to pick out a familiar voice. Long time no see, I said, approaching a table for 7. All eyes at the table turned toward me. Among them was a face that couldn't hide its surprise.
What are you doing here?
My ex-husband David looked at the twins I was holding, and his face turned to one of shock. His parents, sitting across from him, were equally shocked. Yes, I had remarried after divorcing David, and was now a mother of twins. What's the meaning of this? Interrupting our meal? How rude! My former sister-in-law, sitting next to my former mother-in-law, continued eating as if nothing had happened. I told you during the divorce, didn't I? I wanted to show you my adorable babies. Did you now? Don't play dumb. I was bullied for being the wife who couldn't get pregnant by both David and you.
That's a baseless accusation.
Really? You said it was my fault. You said it was all my fault for not being able to have kids. Yet you never even got yourself tested. David averted his eyes and clenched his fists on the table. And you threatened to have a child with someone else. Your mother even said it didn't matter who gave birth, remember? As I said this, a few of my friends approached and said, David, long time no see. We've heard a lot from Emily. You've changed a lot since high school, haven't you? David and I were high school classmates, so the friends I was meeting today were also his classmates. The ones looking stunned were a modest-looking woman sitting next to my ex-husband, and people who seemed to be his parents. I'm sorry for interrupting. Were you announcing your marriage? If so, let me give you some advice as your senior in this household. My ex-husband and his mother looked shocked and tried to stop me. Ignoring them, I raised my voice and said to the woman, Can you have kids? If you don't have them soon, you'll be bullied by these two, you know? The woman looked instantly uneasy and exchanged glances with her parents. Then my former sister-in-law, who had been quietly eating, spoke up. If you're worried, you should back out. What she said is true. It's embarrassing, but that's how our family is.
What are you talking about, sis?
You're not after Emily's child, are you? You're after Dad's position as the hospital director, right? Let's talk about that later. Who says the director has to be a doctor? I'm stepping down, so go ahead. With that, she placed her napkin on the table and said, "I've been invited by a friend who's a doctor. Why don't you come to our fertility clinic?" Everyone was speechless at her words. Yes, my former sister-in-law had always supported me behind the scenes. She had always felt uncomfortable with how her parents ran the hospital, their attitude towards patients, and my brother's ambitions. She even helped me with this revenge. She was the one who told me about the restaurant and my ex-husband's pre-wedding meeting. Unable to take it anymore, my ex-husband's girlfriend left the scene with her parents. My ex-husband tried to chase after her and smooth things over, but was yelled at by her father, collapsed on the spot, and started crying. Seeing this, my former mother-in-law also started crying, and my father-in-law couldn't stop shaking. Afterward, my former sister-in-law officially resigned from my ex-father-in-law's hospital. She came to work as a doctor at the fertility clinic where I work. After she left, the number of patients at my father-in-law's hospital plummeted, partly because she was well-liked and partly because of the restaurant incident. My ex-husband quit his job and tried to turn the business around, but apparently it was pointless. With my former sister-in-law, who was the deputy director, gone, and my ex-husband's engagement broken off, the future of the hospital looked bleak. It's only a matter of time before it changes hands. As for my ex-husband, he seems to be spending his days tormented by emptiness, having lost both his girlfriend and his job, and watching the declining hospital with his parents. As for me, I'm living the happiest life, busy with my twin babies, and still able to work in my calling as a nurse, alongside my husband, who's also a nurse.
I'm sorry for the unpleasant experience today. My brother apologized on behalf of his fiancée. She looks down on me for not having a college degree. Of course, it bothers me, but I didn't want to dislike someone who's going to be a family. I thought that with time, we might come to understand each other. But that day never came. My name is Emily. I'm 34. I live with my dad and mom. I run a bakery. We don't have many locations yet, but we are in a transit center. Business is picking up, so life is busy. One day, my brother, 2 years my senior, suddenly announced his engagement. I was surprised. I never heard of him dating anyone. I was excited to meet her. My brother is kind-hearted and rarely gets angry. I assumed she must be a kind person too. But when she came to our family meeting, she was nothing like I'd imagined. "Wow, this house is huge. What's it worth?" Olivia, my brother's fiancée, asked upon meeting us. I was shocked that she'd ask about the house's value right away. Our family home is spacious and newly renovated. I'd love to live here after the wedding. I can brag to my friends. My parents seemed pleased, but I was taken aback. I don't know about living together. I started to say, but my mom cut me off. "Let's discuss that later. How did you and John meet, Olivia?" Mom is smiling and asking Olivia a question. "We met at a bakery. I fell in love at first sight. He usually works at the headquarters, so I got his contact info right away." Then Olivia and Dad and Mom had a great time talking. The conversation flowed, but I couldn't stand her tone. "Which university did you graduate from, Emily?" she asked me out of the blue. Olivia boasted about her time studying abroad during college. Now she works at a tourist spot, catering to international visitors. When asked about my education, I answered honestly. I never went to college. I wanted to start working as soon as possible. Before I could finish, Olivia interrupted loudly. "What? You dropped out?" She covered her mouth and exaggerated her reaction. Emily is hardworking. I look up to her. Even now, she is the reason. My brother tried to defend me, but Olivia cut him off again. Didn't you have trouble finding a job because you dropped out? Annoyed by Olivia's condescending tone, I snapped, I did have a period of unstable employment. Olivia burst into laughter. So, are you still on a temp worker? Because you dropped out, right? My brother sternly warned her. Don't mock my sister. What matters is who you are, not your education. I was glad my brother stood up for me, but Olivia seemed to sulk after being scolded. She avoided eye contact with me after that. As we were about to say our goodbyes, I bumped into Olivia returning from the restroom. Feeling awkward, I tried to pass quickly when I heard her sigh dramatically. People like you who drop out are just in the way. Please leave our nice home. Her voice, once sugary sweet, had turned cold. Stunned by her transformation, I was at a loss for words. Olivia continued. You have no education. You are 34, single, and still living with your parents. Don't come to the wedding. It could be embarrassing. Saying so insultingly. Her words were so shocking that I was left speechless. I wondered if I should tell my parents and brother about Olivia's harsh words. But my parents were overjoyed to have a lovely daughter-in-law. Even if I told them now, they might not believe me. They might think I'm lying because I'm bitter about being mocked for my lack of education. After all, they were strongly against my decision not to go to college. I've always been considered the odd one out and struggled with group settings. The idea of being commanded by teachers to do the same things as everyone else was unbearable. During career counseling, both my parents and teachers told me no one would hire a dropout. When no one hires me, I'll start my own company, I declared, leaving my parents speechless. My brother was the only one who supported me, despite our parents' strong objections. I think it suits your personality not to work for someone else. Just don't rely on mom and dad for startup money, and make sure to study business management, he advised, helping me convince our parents. After finishing middle school, I took various temp jobs, from retail to manufacturing, saving up for my business. On my days off, I'd hit the library to study business management on my own. After years of this lifestyle, I had a fateful encounter at a bakery where I was temping. It happened to be a non-regular employment at a bakery that happened to enter. When I told the owner about my business aspirations, he took me seriously and taught me the ropes. I studied bread making diligently. By my mid-20s, I had saved enough to open a small bakery. I found joy in running the business and noticed that customer preferences varied by location and time of day. Sandwiches sold well near transit centers in the morning, while loaves and kid-friendly bread were popular in residential areas. Analyzing customer trends and succeeding in business was rewarding. In this way, I started planning one after another, and now I am the president of several stores. Now, I run multiple stores, and biggest supporter has always been my brother. He even quit his sales job at a food company to join my business. It's promising with a hardworking entrepreneur like Emily, he said. It wasn't just because we're family, he genuinely believed in my potential. Thanks to his efforts, like pitching to commercial facilities, both the number of stores and employees have increased. I can't thank him enough, and genuinely want him to be happy. Olivia may be hostile towards me, but she's normal with my brother and parents. Just because she mocks my education doesn't mean she's a bad person. I thought that with time, her views might change. I decided to think positively about my relationship with Olivia. So, I decided to keep quiet about her harsh words for now. As I was contemplating this, my brother called. "I'm sorry for what happened today. I'll tell Olivia that you're the CEO of our company. That should change her attitude," he said. I asked him to keep it a secret, fearing it might make her uncomfortable. He agreed to stay quiet for a while. I wanted to face Olivia without the baggage of education or status. If my brother loves her, we'll understand each other someday. But I later realized that was an illusion. They registered their marriage and started preparing for the wedding. Occasionally, my brother would bring Olivia to meet our parents. I greeted her warmly, despite feeling tense. She'd smile in front of my brother and parents, but when we were alone, she'd hurl insults. "Why don't you get married? You can't even do that. This mansion will be mine. You're in the way, so leave," she'd whisper, so no one else could hear. Still, I refrained from arguing, hoping to understand the woman my brother loved. But Olivia's harsh words had left me feeling down before I knew it. Even at work, I find myself sighing heavily when I think about her visit. I should be excited about the upcoming wedding this weekend, but I can't be. I hate myself for it. I can't tell my brother, who's already married on paper, to call off the wedding now. The one who noticed my troubled state and reached out was a female coworker. She usually works at the store, but she was at the headquarters today for some reason. "Do you know the rumors about your brother, the boss? It's been the talk among the employees." When she mentioned rumors, I had no idea what she was talking about. My brother has a good reputation for being serious, both inside and outside the company. Could he be disliked at the store? Your brother's reputation is great, but his fiancée... I was shocked to hear the content of the rumor. Wait, is that rumor true? I couldn't help but ask. I don't know if it's true, but everyone's talking about it. So I made a call to find out the truth. And then the weekend came, and my brother and Olivia's wedding took place. I was told not to come, but of course I'm his sister. I have to be there. Olivia, who was all smiles, seemed to be in a great mood. Seeing my brother smile in ignorance, my heart aches. I was boiling with anger, remembering the rumor I heard the other day. "I wonder how long you can keep smiling," I muttered, looking at Olivia's smiling face. The reception is over, so I head to the bride and groom's waiting room. When I knock on the door, Olivia's voice answers from inside. Entering the room, my brother is nowhere to be found. Olivia, seeing me, clearly shows her disdain. "What are you doing here?" The bride, who was cheerful just moments ago, now has a frown. I say nothing and move closer. "What are you doing? Don't come near me, you loser. If he stays married to someone like you, my brother will never be happy. Why don't you just leave?" Olivia is furious at my words. "What? Why should I divorce? You're the one who's dependent on our parents. A dropout single woman should leave the mansion." Olivia loudly berates me and talks about cutting ties. I give a small laugh and look into Olivia's eyes. "You are having an affair with another man, yet you act so high and mighty." At my words, Olivia's face stiffens for a moment. But she still maintains her defiant attitude. "I don't know what you're talking about. Get out." Olivia tries to forcibly remove me from the room. Just then, my brother bursts in, his face red, and shouts, "The one who should leave is you." Both Olivia and I are stunned by my usually mild-mannered brother's yelling. I heard everything from outside. What's this about an affair? And how dare you talk to my sister like that? Olivia, unaware that my brother had been listening, looked pale as a ghost. It's not what you think. Tears filled her eyes as she desperately tried to explain. My brother's face remained stern. I pulled out some documents and photos and laid them on the table. The pictures showed Olivia hugging a man who was not my brother out in public. My brother looked at the photos, speechless. He probably never suspected his wife was cheating on him. He's just a close friend. She tried to make an excuse, but it was clearly unbelievable. I hired a private investigator. Seems like you meet his close friend quite often, even inviting him to your home late at night. My brother and Olivia haven't moved in together yet. Taking advantage of that, it seems Olivia had been inviting the man to her home. What's going on? Explain yourself. My brother pressed her, but Olivia, realizing she had no more excuses, remained silent. Fed up with her attitude, my brother said, I never thought you'd be like this. Let's get a divorce. Olivia, being told to divorce right after the wedding, started to freak out. How can we divorce now? What will I tell everyone? Just say you were caught cheating and had to divorce. I'll hand all the evidence to my brother, so make sure to pay the alimony in the divorce trial. Olivia, trembling with rage, yelled at me. There's no way someone like you could afford a private investigator. You've been stalking me, haven't you? If I had that much free time, I'd rather be working. You see, I'm the CEO of the company where your husband, my brother, works. I finally revealed my true identity. That's a lie. You're just a part-time worker living off your parents. No, that's your misconception. I wanted to face you without any preconceptions about educational background or status. I thought maybe we could understand each other someday, since you're the woman my brother loves. That's why I asked my brother not to tell you that I'm the CEO. Olivia looked incredulous and turned to my brother, who nodded. So, you're saying you're the one paying John's salary? You're the one who built this mansion? Olivia's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief. An employee tipped me off. There were rumors about my brother's fiancée walking around looking cozy with an unknown man. No one wanted to tell my brother directly, so he never noticed. I don't mind spending money on a private investigator if it helps my brother see the truth. Olivia seemed overwhelmed by the flood of information. I decided to leave the rest to my brother. I had hopes that we could understand each other someday, but what a waste of time. As a wife, shouldn't you at least remember the name of your husband's company's CEO? Not that it matters now that you're getting a divorce. I left the room with a scornful remark. A few days later, my brother, who had decided to divorce, reported it to Dad and Mom. They questioned him, asking why. He told them about Olivia's problematic behavior and her affair, but Dad and Mom were slow to believe him. Dad and Mom only knew the act that Olivia had been putting on. However, a few days later, an event occurred that made them believe my brother. Late at night, the doorbell rang. When we opened the door at such an hour, it was Olivia standing there. "It's your fault John left me," she yelled, lunging at me. Dad quickly restrained Olivia, but her verbal abuse towards me didn't stop. "What CEO? You have no education and no man in your life. You're pathetic." Dad and Mom were stunned by Olivia's true colors. Now they must have a clear understanding of her real character. Mom called Olivia's parents and asked them to come pick her up. When she told them about the verbal abuse and the affair, Olivia's parents, who knew nothing about it, deeply apologized. Olivia was also forced to apologize deeply and broke down crying in frustration. "Please never show your face here again," I said, and she was dragged away by her parents. My brother filed for divorce, using the evidence of the affair I had gathered, and claimed alimony. Not only from Olivia, but also from the man she was involved with. He managed to secure about $30,000 in total. He gave me a portion of the alimony, saying it was for the trouble I'd gone through and the money spent on the private investigator. Rumors spread that Olivia was caught cheating and got divorced, and it seems she is now receiving cold satires from her friends. I heard from a gossip-loving employee that Olivia has become a recluse since losing her friends. My brother was feeling down, saying he's had enough of women. But I'm sure my sincere and kind brother will meet someone good someday. Wishing for my brother's happiness, I continue to work hard to grow the company.